They told you freedom came at 65, that if you stuck it out, worked hard, kept your head down, stayed loyal for 40 years, you'd earn your way there. That golden moment when the job ends and real life finally begins. Travel the world, sleep in, pick up old hobbies, finally exhale. That was the dream, right? But what if it was never real? What if that picture of retirement was just a well-packaged illusion, one designed to keep you moving, compliant, productive, all without ever asking, what's the actual cost? For most of us, the path was clear from the start. Do well in school, get a stable job, put in the years, then freedom. That's the script, the plan. The path we're all nudged down from the moment we can walk. But almost no one ever asks, who wrote this script? Who benefits from it? Because here's the truth. The freedom waiting at the end of that path doesn't feel like freedom at all. A 2020 study by the Stanford Center on Longevity found that more than 2/3 of retirees in America feel disoriented within just 18 months of retirement. Not because they're broke, not because they're bored, but because they've lost something deeper, their sense of identity. Think about that. You retire. No more emails, no more meetings, no more job title to cling to. For the first time in decades, you're no longer needed, and it hits you hard. Because the system never prepared you for freedom, it prepared you to function, to operate, to produce. You were a part of the machine, and now that the machine doesn't need you, it just lets you go. Quietly, with a smile. It's not a celebration, it's a dismissal. Retirement isn't the glorious reward we've been promised. It's more like being ushered off stage after a lifetime performance. The role ends, the lights go down, and no one tells you what to do next. And that's when the real crisis begins. Not a financial one, an existential one. Who are you without the job, without the deadlines, without the title that once made you feel significant? For years, decades even, your value was measured by output, by productivity. You were your work, and now you're expected to just relax, enjoy life, feel free. But how do you do that when no one ever taught you how? That's the part no one talks about. Retirement wasn't built for your fulfillment. It wasn't about self-discovery or deep reflection. It wasn't some long-awaited permission slip to finally be yourself. It was a system's way of phasing you out, gracefully, strategically, and making you believe it was all for your benefit. That's the genius of the illusion. It doesn't sound like a punishment. It sounds like a gift. But like Alan Watts said, you are under no obligation to be the person you were told to be. And that one sentence, it shatters the retirement myth completely. Because if you were never meant to live by someone else's script, then maybe retirement isn't the final chapter. Maybe it's the realization that the book was never even yours. And that realization stings. Because it forces a deeper question to the surface. What does freedom actually mean? If you've spent your entire life waiting for someone to give you permission to live, were you ever really living? We're raised to delay everything. Joy, curiosity, rest, discovery. We're taught life begins later, after the work is done. But the truth is, life has been happening all along. We just didn't notice. We were too busy preparing for it. So maybe the real lie isn't just retirement. Maybe the lie is that we needed to wait at all. Because freedom isn't a destination. It's a way of showing up, and we could have chosen it at any time. If only someone had told us that, but no one did. Because free people aren't easy to control. Free people don't follow scripts. Free people don't delay life, they live it now. And once you see that, once you really see that, the whole structure starts to look different. You start to see the machine. Because the life you were taught to call normal, it's not natural. It's a system. One that was built to standardize human beings, not liberate them. Starting in the 20th century, life was industrialized, broken down into predictable phases. Education, employment, retirement, death. A clean, simple timeline. Easy to track, easy to manage. From the moment you were born, your path was already mapped. Learn to sit still, raise your hand, memorize, pass the test, then pick a career. Clock in, clock out, repeat. And after 40 years, if you're lucky, you get a small window of freedom before the curtain falls. But here's the part they don't teach you. Retirement wasn't created for you. It wasn't a gift. It was an economic strategy. Back in 1889, German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck introduced the first official retirement system, not as a reward, but as a way to cycle older, less efficient workers out of the labor force. It wasn't about compassion, it was about productivity. Policy disguised as kindness, and we accepted it as truth, because the system never asked you, what kind of life do you want? It only asked, what kind of worker can you be? Slowly over time, your value became defined by how well you could serve the system's needs, not your own. You were trained to ask how to work better, not why you were working at all. You weren't taught to question the routine, only to optimize it. There's a 2007 study from the American Psychological Association called The Retiring Mind that put it bluntly. Modern humans rarely design their own lives. They just follow plans written by others. And when you think about it, isn't that what most of us do? We inherit a script, we follow it, we spend our best years grinding, sometimes more than 47 hours a week, without ever stopping to ask, who is this really serving? That's the deeper deception, the illusion that your life belongs to you, when in reality it's been scripted, monetized, and sold back to you from the start. The education system trains you for labor, the labor system consumes your time, and the retirement system quietly replaces you when your efficiency fades. This isn't a design for human flourishing. It's a blueprint for output. A life optimized for productivity, not presence. And the wild part? Most people never question it, not because they agree, but because they've never seen an alternative. When a machine is all you've ever known, silence starts to feel like peace. But it's not peace, it's numbness. It's the quiet hum of a life lived on autopilot. You're not free, you're just not asking anymore. And that might be the most dangerous part. Not that you're trapped, but that you've stopped noticing the cage. Because what we're really starving for beneath all the noise, all the checklists and achievements, is meaning. Not the kind you hang on a wall or post on social media, but the kind that lives in your bones, the kind that makes you feel like your existence actually matters. And here's the thing, meaning doesn't come from waiting for life to begin at some future milestone. It comes from paying attention, from being awake to the world right now. The system trains you to chase goals, titles, promotions, savings accounts, but it never trained you to sit with your own thoughts, to listen to yourself. And when that noise finally fades, when the meetings stop and the deadlines disappear, what's left is the silence you never learned how to navigate. That's when people start to panic, because in that stillness, you're finally face to face with the self you've ignored for decades. This is why so many people feel lost after retirement. They didn't just lose a job, they lost the only map they ever had. And without that structure, without those external signposts telling them who they are and what to do next, they feel like they're drifting. But what if that drift isn't a curse? What if it's an invitation? An invitation to reclaim something that was always yours, your agency. You see, real freedom isn't about endless leisure or permanent vacation mode. That's just another illusion, another product. Real freedom is being able to wake up and decide for yourself what matters. It's being able to craft your day from the inside out, not because someone handed you a schedule, but because you built one based on what brings you alive. And that requires rethinking how you relate to time. Most of us live as though time is something we have to earn. Like joy or peace is only allowed after everything else is done. After the inbox is empty, after the mortgage is paid, after the world gives you permission. But time doesn't wait, and neither does life. The longer you defer your presence, the more of your existence gets spent on autopilot. But here's the powerful part. You can shift. Right now. Not after you retire, not when things finally calm down, but today. You can stop measuring your life in terms of output and start measuring it in terms of alignment. Is this moment true to me? Does this action reflect my values? Am I moving from fear or from love? It's not about becoming unproductive. It's about becoming conscious. There's a huge difference between being busy and being awake. And once you see that difference, once you taste that shift, even for a moment, you start to realize just how deep the conditioning runs. How many decisions you made just to fit into a script you didn't write. The school you went to, the job you chose, the house you bought, the hours you kept. How much of that was really you? It's uncomfortable to ask those questions, but it's also liberating. Because if your life was shaped by unconscious momentum, then it can be reshaped. consciously, deliberately, with care. You don't have to burn everything down or walk away from your responsibilities. That's not what this is about. This is about waking up inside your own life and asking, what do I want now? Not just what I was told to want, not what I think I'm supposed to want, but what actually resonates with who I am today. That's the beginning of agency. And agency is where real freedom lives, not in retirement plans, not in senior travel packages, but in the quiet courage to live a life that reflects who you truly are. Of course, the machine doesn't want you to think this way, because a person with agency can't be easily manipulated. You can't sell freedom to someone who already feels free. You can't scare someone into compliance if they've stopped living for someone else's approval. So the system distracts you with fear, with noise, with consumption. It tells you that if you just buy one more thing, earn one more title, secure one more safety net, you'll finally feel whole. But you won't, because wholeness was never out there. It was always within. It was buried beneath the roles and the routines, the masks and the metrics. And maybe that's the most radical thing you can do. Stop. Breathe. Look at your life not as a checklist, but as a canvas. What would you create if you weren't trying to impress anyone? What would you explore if no one was watching? What would you feel if you gave yourself permission to feel it? These aren't easy questions, but they're essential ones, because they point to the parts of you that never got to speak. The parts you silenced in order to be responsible, successful, normal. The parts that still remember what it means to be alive. And that's the tragedy of the retirement myth. It promises freedom later in exchange for your aliveness now. But the longer you postpone that aliveness, the harder it is to recover. You forget how to play, how to dream, how to be. You forget that you're allowed to be more than a title, more than a job, more than a cog. That's why the most powerful thing you can reclaim isn't your time, it's yourself. And it doesn't happen all at once. It's not a switch you flip. It's a practice, a daily return to presence, 1,000 small choices that say, I will not live on autopilot. I will not wait for permission. I will meet my life now. So yes, strip away the myth of retirement, but don't stop there. Strip away the myth of postponement, the myth of later, the myth that your life exists somewhere in the distance and that you'll arrive when things finally settle. Nothing settles unless you settle it. And settling doesn't mean giving up. It means grounding, rooting, saying, this is my life and I'm going to live it fully. Not someday, but now. Even if the system still tries to pull you back into the script, even if the world around you keeps measuring worth in terms of output, even if everyone else is still chasing the next milestone, you can step off that track. You can live your days with depth instead of delay, with clarity instead of compliance, with intention instead of inertia. Because freedom isn't out there waiting at the end of a 40-year career. It's here, in the breath you just took, in the choice you're about to make, in the question you finally have the courage to ask. What kind of life do I want to create starting today? And here's where the uncomfortable truth hits hardest. If you're not actively designing your life, someone else is. If you're not choosing what matters to you, the world will choose for you, and it will choose poorly. It will choose comfort over growth, approval over authenticity, productivity over presence. Not because it's malicious, but because it's blind. Systems don't care who you become. They care that you fit. But you should care. You should care about whether your days reflect your values, whether your routines support your soul, whether your goals are even yours to begin with. That's the shift we're talking about, from passive existence to active authorship. But authorship requires something the system never trained you for: inner clarity. It demands that you stop outsourcing your sense of meaning, that you stop treating your purpose like something to find in a job listing or a self-help book, that you start listening inward instead of performing outward. Because performance is exhausting. It drains the life out of your life. And most of us have been performing for so long that we've forgotten what it feels like to just be, to exist without trying to justify that existence through output. This is why so many people reach retirement and feel hollow. They don't know who they are without the performance. They don't know how to move through the day without a to-do list to validate them. And in the silence, they feel exposed. But what if that exposure is exactly what you need? What if what you're calling emptiness is really just space? Space to remember. To remember what lit you up as a child. To remember what fascinated you before you were told it wouldn't pay the bills. To remember the version of you that wasn't edited to fit expectations. That version of you isn't gone, it's buried. And retirement, ironically, might be the first real chance to excavate it. But that excavation is only possible if you're willing to stop distracting yourself. Because that's what much of modern retirement has become, distraction. You don't just leave the office, you enter a new matrix of golf games and cruises and endless TV shows. It feels like leisure, but often it's just another way to avoid yourself. And that's the tragedy. We spend our lives avoiding ourselves and then call it freedom. True freedom is not escape, it's encounter. Encounter with the present moment. Encounter with your actual desires. Encounter with the uncomfortable parts of you that never got a voice. And those encounters, they're sacred. They're what make life rich, regardless of your job status, your age, or your retirement account. Because when you stop chasing life and start meeting it, everything changes. Your relationships deepen, your priorities shift. You stop needing external validation to feel okay. You start sourcing your meaning from within. And that inner shift, it changes how you move through the world. You stop running, you start rooting. And rooted people are powerful, not because they dominate, but because they don't sway with every gust of opinion. They're not desperate to prove themselves. They're not panicking when plans fall apart. They've made peace with presence. That's what's waiting for you beyond the myth of retirement. Not a vacation, but a return. A return to yourself. A return to the inner compass you've always had, but were too busy to follow. And when you start living from that place, you realize that retirement doesn't have to be a destination. It can be a mindset, a philosophy, a way of approaching life with slowness, intention, and gratitude now, not just when the system says it's allowed. So maybe don't ask, when can I retire? Ask, how can I live in alignment today? Because waiting for retirement to feel alive is like waiting for winter to feel warm. You're asking for the exception, not the rule. But life is happening now, not after the next promotion, not after the kids grow up, not after you finally reach some financial checkpoint, now. And this doesn't mean abandon planning. It means stop deferring your soul. Stop building a future that costs you the present. Stop chasing freedom by sacrificing the very thing that gives freedom its value, your attention. Because attention is the real currency. It's what makes your memories. It's what deepens your connections. It's what allows you to notice beauty, to feel wonder, to experience awe. But the modern world wants your attention scattered. It wants you distracted and anxious, because distracted, anxious people buy more, work more, obey more. Which means that reclaiming your attention isn't just self-care, it's rebellion. It's saying, I refuse to be a passive consumer of my own life. I will not trade my soul for comfort. I will not die with a perfect resume and a hollow heart. I want to live now. Even if I still have responsibilities, even if I can't quit my job today, even if my time is limited, I will carve out space for presence, for stillness, for joy, for awe, for the parts of life that can't be monetized, but make it worth living. Because in the end, the real tragedy isn't that we worked too long, it's that we waited too long to start living. There's an old saying, most men die at 25 but aren't buried until 75. It's haunting because it's true. Somewhere along the way, we mistake survival for living. We confuse movement with meaning. We fall into routines that slowly erase us until the fire inside becomes a flicker, and we call that adulthood. But adulthood doesn't have to mean dullness. It can mean depth, it can mean choice, it can mean taking ownership of your days instead of letting them own you. That's the hidden opportunity in all this, not just in retirement, but in reimagining your relationship to time, to value, to purpose. See, the modern world has sold us a story. Work hard now, enjoy life later. Defer pleasure, delay presence, postpone joy. But the problem is, later isn't guaranteed. And even if it comes, you might arrive at it so spiritually starved that no amount of beach vacations or hobby time can fill the hole. Because that hole was never about hours. It was about how you lived them, whether you were there, whether you paid attention, whether your life reflected you or just your obligations. So here's the pivot. Don't chase retirement, chase resonance. Resonance with your values, with your inner voice, with the kind of life that doesn't need escape because it already feels whole. Because a truly rich life isn't built by waiting. It's built by weaving. Weaving meaning into your morning routine, weaving presence into your conversations, weaving soul into your work, even if that work isn't glamorous. And if your job is soul-killing, that matters. Don't ignore it. But don't treat it like the only lever either. Start small. Start with your mornings, your weekends, your lunch breaks. Start with 5 minutes of stillness. Start with noticing what makes you feel alive, and then follow that thread, gently but relentlessly. Because your soul is always whispering. It doesn't shout. It waits. And most people are so busy, they never hear it. Or worse, they hear it, but mute it. Don't mute it. That voice inside you, the one that longs for slowness, for simplicity, for meaning, it's not naive. It's ancient. It's the part of you that remembers what this life is really about. It's the part of you that never bought into the illusion that success means sacrificing everything else. That voice is your compass. And if you ignore it for too long, retirement won't save you. No paycheck can buy peace. No vacation can replace purpose. But when you start aligning, really aligning, life begins to unfold differently. Not perfectly, not without hardship, but with depth, with congruence, with integrity. And then retirement? It stops being a fantasy. It becomes just another phase of life, no more or less meaningful than this one. Because the goal was never to escape work. The goal was to wake up, to yourself, to your life, to the moments you used to rush through on your way to someday. Well, this is it. This is the someday you were waiting for. Not out there. Not 30 years from now. Not after your final paycheck. Here, now. In the quiet between tasks. In the breath before the next email. In the way the light hits your coffee. In the person sitting next to you. In the things that don't make headlines, but make a life. Retirement was never the point. Presence was. And it still is.